We have been on a journey. I mean, think about it. We're at the deep end, number 283. And we've been on this journey that took us from the beginning of being to life, all the way to consciousness. And we traced how these three essential processes of semi-permeability, complexification, and differentiation moved us from one order of being to life to consciousness all the way up to now. And we've tried to lift up some ways of thinking and being that facilitate the growing development and evolution of human beings. And today, I want to celebrate. I want to celebrate me, you, and the whole ball of wax that is the human family. And I want to suggest that me, you, and all of us are each and all living miracles. Living miracles. Whoa, what does that mean? Now, when you think of miracle, the reigning definition is basically has to do with surprising, astonishing, or welcome events considered to be the work of some divine agency. Yet, there are meanings that need no divine agency. The word miracle actually comes from the Latin miraculum, and it is that which causes wonder and astonishment, being extraordinary in itself and amazing or inexplicable by normal standards. Now, I like the word marvel. And we've heard different understandings of miracle. The Empire State Building and the Eiffel Tower were both considered miracles of engineering. The polio vaccine, a miracle. So I want to go to what my favorite definition is and the cause for this podcast, which is that which is improbable, not normal. And I want you to see that you being here is improbable. It is not normal. If you it might look normal on the earth, but if you spread it out to the universe, one mathematician tried to calculate the odds of any of us being here, and he said it was 400 trillion to 1, the odds of you being here. Think about that. I mean, there were 200 to 500 million sperm trying to get to the egg, and one of them got there, and it's you. I mean, I don't know about you, but this stuff makes me really high just thinking about it. So by all practical measures, none of us ought to be here, yet here we are. Now, you add on to the 400 trillion to 1, and you think about another. How many billions of things and processes have to go right for any of us to take a single breath? And you add all that together, and the probability of you being here, the probability of you being alive and sustaining all these processes to create this self-awareness and a mystery of the self and all the attendant aspects, breathing and eating and scrounging for a life or living the life of ease. My friends, God or not, no God, you are a living miracle. You are an improbable being whose self-awareness is even more improbable. So today, ye frickin' ha for us. Let's celebrate our own existence and our conscious awareness of our existence, which is just layer upon layer of improbability. We are each of us a living miracle, and by all odds should not be here. So let us celebrate. Some might call it a blessing. Some might say it's the gods of random sync. Some might say it's just a mishmash and it came together by chance, which it probably did, which makes it even more improbable because chance has to do with it. But being alive, it's an amazing event. And being able to adjust one's sight in order to appropriate the true blessings, the true improbability, the true miracle of our being and existence and being aware and self-conscious. Wow. So today we celebrate. I just threw a whole lot out there, mostly just affirmational stuff, I think. I'm here with Bob Hayes, who's coming to us from Florida, and Mary Ann Rudis, who's coming to us from Spokane Valley. My name's Red Hawk, and I'm coming from the South Hill in Spokane. And, every day life gets more mysterious and more cause for celebration. So, Bob, what say you on celebrating life?
Well, I think that's probably the best way to look at it, because, we've got a choice. We're here. We're alive. As improbable as it may be, this is where we are. And if we can celebrate it, if we can approach it in a way that brings us a greater amount of joy, then that's going to make the whole journey a little bit more pleasant for ourselves and for all of those around us. Now, that's really difficult when you've got obstacles, shall we say, to your path through your journey. And those obstacles are very trying, and it makes it's very difficult sometimes to say, oh boy, the tornado missed my house. Let's celebrate when you look out and there's a devastation all around you. But again, it's the trick of consciousness. I don't know if trick's the right word, but the reality of consciousness is we can't really control all of the things that affect us. We can only control how we react to them. And if we can react as much as possible in a celebratory manner, then I think it's been shown in many different ways that's more healthy for us.
Yeah. Well, and I want to say this podcast is a celebration, but I don't think all of life is cause for celebration. But I will say this in response. I have seen more people on the news in the last month whose houses were gone. They were in a neighborhood that was devastated, and they said, I am so thankful that me and my family are alive. It feels like a blessing. So that's where I am hoping we dance around, is this place where life is both fragile and resilient. And even in the midst of tragedy, that doesn't mean we go, oh boy, everything's gone. But we do reduce ourselves to a point of now. And as many scientists are saying, the future and the past don't exist at all. The only thing we have is now. So it's an awareness. I pray that everybody can celebrate, and that doesn't mean you party and you blow your party horn in a tragedy. And I guess, thanks, Bob, because I really want to make that clear. That's not what I'm saying. I'm not a Pollyanna type
toxic
person.
Positivity.
Yeah. So, Marianne, what do you say?
Well, yeah, I was just thinking, that's toxic positivity, where it's like, oh, let's just be happy in spite of all of the horrible things that are happening around us. But, and I like the idea of relating that celebratory spirit to gratitude, because there's always something that we can be grateful for, even in the midst of horrible, horrible things. And that takes a lot of work. And it takes a mindset, and we've talked many times about how do we allow new thoughts, new ideas to come into our consciousness to help us see things differently. And when you're talking about miracles, so there's actually a book called A Course in Miracles that I've read a while ago, and the whole idea behind that is that a miracle is a change, the ability to see something in a new way. That's the miracle, because we get set in our ways and we get inundated with the things that happen outside in the world. Right now I'm dealing with a lot of it, and we can get inundated with it. So the miracle comes in where we can go, oh, wait, I can look at this in a different way. And bring some gratitude into it, bring some positivity into it, bring some perspective into it, and not deny that it's hard, because it is hard. But we can do hard things. So, which is kind of a miracle in and of itself, right?
Yeah. And I loved your term, toxic positivity. That is a really good term. My sister used to tell me.
Not my term. It's out there. Yeah.
My sister used to tell me the story of this guru who saw the goodness everywhere he went, and one of his students kept trying to take him to places that weren't very nice, and he found this dog that was dead in the street and decomposing, and he took his master and said, "Oh, look at that awful dog." And the master looks at him and says, "Oh, but what nice teeth he had." And my sister would say, "You see, that's what we..." And I go, "Bullshit. Someone should have gotten a damn shovel and a plastic bag and picked up the damn dog and got him off the street." You know, so I want to put, and I think what Bob was saying is very important, this toxic positivity, that we don't bring it, the three of us, at least as far as I can see, are pretty much realists. And if things are screwed, we're not afraid to say they're screwed. If something's decomposing, we're not afraid to say it's decomposing or it stinks. So I want to get that under our belt, and that's a whole other podcast, I think. Go ahead, Marianne.
Well, I was going to say, but we also, I don't think we dwell on that either, because you can start to dwell in that space and feel like a victim and feel like this is the worst thing in the world. And I think I talked about this before, where I saw the memes of the two worlds. Here's the world before your crisis, and here's the world after your crisis. The world's going to go on, right? So anyway, go ahead, Bob. I didn't mean to interrupt you.
No, I was just going to go back to the idea that really self-awareness gives us the power to interpret things in different ways, and in ways that can enlighten us, can lift us up, or in ways that, as you say, we can dwell on things and almost get a pleasure out of how difficult things are. Oh, woe is me. Why me? Why me? And get some sort of strange reward out of that behavior when we also have the power to look at it differently. I just saw a little clip from Paul. Having a little trouble with my mouth and lips today. Pawn Stars, and somebody was trying to sell them a copy of Milton's Paradise Lost, and their expert came in and just picked out a famous passage, and it said, the mind. Paraphrasing, the mind is a wonderful thing. It can make a hell of heaven and a heaven of hell. And that 400-year-old poem was really touching on for one thing, that's a miracle that somebody was able to articulate that back in the 15th century or 16th century. And it's a miracle that we're still learning from it today. And it's still as relevant today as it was then. And so I think the idea of miracles, they happen all the time. And if we are tuned to observe them and to use them in a positive way, then the world is miraculous. Now, again, that doesn't mean you shouldn't bury the dog.
Right.
Yeah. Well, and I think whatever's happening, who and what is experiencing it is what I'm talking about. So stop, take a breath. Sometimes, for me, it has to do with laughing out loud in the face of the most horrendous stuff. Just to, for me, take a breath, laugh out loud. And maybe that comes from an Alan Watts film on meditation, where at the end he walks into a lily pond and says the best meditation of all is laughter. And the film ends with him just standing in the middle of this lotus pond laughing his ass off. And there's something about that reminds me to stop and realize the improbability of me even being here, having a relationship with you two, being able to have these conversations. Again, I've studied a lot of physiology, man, and just taking a breath and the exchange of value. I think of it as you go to change your euros into dollars. Well, we're changing carbon dioxide into oxygen. I mean, and there's an exchange rate there that can be measured. They put that little thing on your finger when you go to the doctor. What they're looking at is the exchange rate of your carbon dioxide to oxygen in your blood, and are you still within life-giving,
Yeah. And it's even more miraculous. And, we've talked about systems theory and about all of these different things over the different episodes. But maybe the most powerful thing that science has discovered is what's called multivariate analysis. That means that just about everything we look at, there's multiple different variables that are affecting that. So you mentioned, the oxygen and carbon dioxide exchange. But in order to get that, you have to have the sodium and potassium exchange that's going on in your nervous system that enables you to move your diaphragm and move that air in and out. And all of these different things, and I could rattle off, not off the top of my head, but someone could rattle off 100 different variables that are involved in that.
Amen.
That all come together to make that breath possible. And then when you start looking out into the world around us, we want to make it simple, but nothing is simple. There are so many variables that interact, and we try and see what the ones that are the most affecting of all those variables, and we try to affect those and make changes and so forth. And we're just kind of stumbling through this miracle that's going on all around us because we can't get a hold of all of those variables.
Well, and we're slowly learning that they're working in concert with each other. And we're now not looking at the different instruments, the different pieces, but we're looking at the symphony and the overall composition. And that's a new order of perception that basically allows us to get higher and higher on how miraculous anything is, because it's all interdependent.
Yeah.
Right. And that's where that appreciation and gratitude comes in, because it is everything that's happening is complex, and it is a miracle that any of us are here or anything's happening at all. And to shift our mindset into being able to just appreciate that complexity, appreciate the scent of a beautiful flower, and just really be able to put it all into a different way of seeing the world and a different way of seeing life, right?
Yeah.
And I think that's, one of you said earlier, to see the world in a new way. I think we are change agents. We are now participating in our own development and evolution. This is a whole new piece. And it's a whole way for us to be in the world in a new way. And this is what I really want our listeners to get. Don't take it for granted. Shit's going to pile up on you. It does on every one of us. Stop for a moment. When my grandkid or even I get upset, Edie will say, stop, take a breath. Just breathe for a second. And there's a centering way that you can call the miracle of your existence back into the forefront of your mind. And when you're looking through that lens, then the world starts looking a little bit different at a time. And that's what I call spiritual growth. Does that make sense? I mean, how do you get to that place where you're at your growing edge? And I think a huge conception is, you're a freaking miracle.
I was just going to say, it's a miracle, right? That's what a miracle is. And if we do affect the world through our observations. And if you observe something and we start to live in that space of it's all a miracle, then we're gonna change the world, I think. So,
and I think we are, and that's part of what this huge reaction formation is, not just in America but on the planet. Of we got to get back, to some idyllic thing, and it's because change is overwhelming, and there's been more change in our lives than probably the 1,000 years before. When you really think about it, I mean, again, my dad, when he died, he was still calling a refrigerator an icebox because that's what he had when he was a kid. Running around after the ice wagon and getting chips of ice. There was a whole culture that went with that, and the refrigerator changed that. Human beings, we're on a journey, and it's very painful at times. It's mysterious all the time, I think, if we pay attention. Yet it's a miraculous event that we're not just inside of, but it's inside of us. We are probably, as far as we know right now, the however many pounds in your brain, that's probably the most advanced place in the whole universe that we know of right now. We're a product of improbability. I think of people say, is there life on another planet? And, it's got the elements. But think of what allowed mammals to evolve. An asteroid that wiped out the reptiles and allowed these little shrews that were living underground and couldn't see squat. The only way they sorted themselves out is by smell. Think about the journey. And if you're not getting high from that, eat some mushrooms.
Force that high, right?
Or at least slow down a little bit and allow yourself the opportunity to experience it in a better way.
Yeah. Allow yourself to take a breath. I think that is one of the best pieces of advice. Just stop and take a breath and give yourself a little bit of space in between acting and reacting and what's happening and what's coming at you, right?
And I've shared the story where I got out of the service and I was on my 4th or 5th job because they didn't last too long there for a while. And I told my dad, I was bitching. And he said, well, go somewhere where no one has a problem. And I thought we were going to a bar. And he took me to Arlington Cemetery. And that's where he said, nobody here's got a problem. It's all worked out. And he said, life is problems. He said, you can get emotional and all that, and that's part of it. But it's life, man. It's being self-aware and feeding your own mystery. And I think that's part of how valuable you two are to me, is you feed my mystery. It's not about figuring it out. It's about how do we think about this in some different ways that allow us to be more alive in the midst of whatever the hell's going on here, and to be more helpful. The word I use is facilitate the flow. How do we do that? And I think that's part of what the Deep End has been about, is trying to lay out a groundwork for understanding with an anatomy of wonder, and then to allow wonder itself as a thread to help us weave through all these little sub-mysteries that is self-consciousness.
Yeah. I saw a quote that said, we're all eight multidimensional beings, and yet that multidimensional being wanted to be a human being. And so here we are, and you're right, it is one obstacle, one problem, one lesson, dare I say, after another, that we're just kind of making our way through this reality.
Yeah. And most of those suck, those challenges. I mean, as an old person, new knee twice over, new hip, new back. Now I got new eyes. And, you know, the process of going through all that is weary making. A lot of it is spirit stealing. And those challenges, of course, I go to Don Juan, says, you know, one of your last enemies is old age, because you get comfortable. And that, you know, how do you defeat that? And it's like, damn, I don't know. I'm just going to survive the next surgery and see where it takes me. So I think that, again, everybody, we're all human beings. We're all screwed up. You know, and I've said, you know, I think life isn't, you know, self-conscious life is an algorithm. We're trying stuff that works and we're trying stuff that doesn't work. And to be honest with that within our own minds and our own souls and our planet, because we're still banging up against each other in some places. How do we not take ourselves for granted, but allow ourselves to see ourselves continually as an event that is phenomenal and beyond any reason or probability? And I don't know.
Yeah.
And I can't believe it, but we're coming to the end of our time. So, Marianne, I'll ask for your final comments first.
Well, you know, I think not taking things for granted is really important. And you were talking about how much things have changed. But even as we've gone through all of these changes, there is so much that hasn't changed at all, that is still the same. And, you know, Bob, you brought up a passage from, you know, that still rings true. And even if you look back at, like, all of the mystery schools back in ancient times, you know, the wisdom that came out of those places is still relevant and still true today. I think what's happening is those were clusters and cloistered societies or groups, and now that is being spread across all of us. We all have access to this. And so I think, and it is a miracle if we can just wake up and see what we have access to. Think in a new way. It's our challenge.
Yeah. And what did Einstein say? Everything's changed but the way we think. And if we don't change the way we think, we'll probably go down. So, amen, sister.
Yeah.
Thank you. Bob, final comments?
You know, we've talked over and over about how we relate to the universe metaphorically, how everything that we think about is sort of a metaphor. And I'm going to end with a miraculous metaphor, which is that we each are on our separate journeys. If you can envision a path that is leading through the jungle that has its twists and turns, and we're each on different paths, but sometimes they come together. And I look at the miracle of the three of us doing the deep end, and I feel like our paths have come together for a while, and we're dancing our way down this yellow brick road with our friends and enjoying the journey.
Amen.
Yay.
And my friends, seriously, a lot of this stuff happens intellectually at first. You have to stop and tell yourself it. But I assure you, if you stop, take a breath, really consider how improbable you being here is. If you keep doing that, you will begin to see it with your eyes and ears, with the way you are in the world and how you're in the world. And I think that's what it's all about. That is what it's all about. Because the fact is, if you're here, that's it. We're here. And you can't deny that. So, what's going to save us? What are we going to do? Well, you know, some people say Buddhism's going to save us. And Buddha says, don't expect anybody but yourself to save you. People say Jesus is going to save us. There's all the salvific talk, even in the Mahabharata and Hinduism and in Taoism. There's the Tao is going to save us. But what is really happening? I think what's going to save us is twin-forked. It's empathy and curiosity together. So that's where we're going next week. We're going to look at what will save us. We're going to go inside of empathy. What's really going on there? How does it work against us? Because there's places where it does, and there's places in the world where it's doing that today. Curiosity. Oh my gosh, this is an amazing thing. And yet, as Jurassic Park says, there's some things we can do that we probably should not do. So let's go there. Let's dare to test the limits and the love of curiosity and empathy. Until then, my friends, may the blessings of the One be on you, and may you, with every breath, recognize the miracle of who you are.